Hi, Brock. Thank you so much for joining me on this podcast.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
I I do these things where I just literally ask people to be on my podcast, and you said yes, and it's probably the easiest yes I've ever had. So thank you for doing this.
Of course. Yeah. No, I'm excited that we're going to get to have this conversation. I've been following you for a while, and so it's something I've been looking forward to.
Thank you. So I want to just go right into it and ask you a really difficult question. You started social media when you were quite young. But if we think about this day and age right now, I'm literally thinking about my child. I'm thinking about my nephew and niece and how they are allowed to, whether they're not allowed to be on social media. Do you have any reflections over how it was for you and what you might say to parents today?
Oof. Yeah. This is such a tough question. And I totally think that the way I was raised and the way social media was when I was raised is so different than nowadays. I mean, Instagram came out when I was in middle school. So nowadays, that's kind of like the age where most people start considering, should my kid be on social media? Should they be allowed to have a phone? That was when Instagram first came out. So back then, there wasn't even these conversations taking place. It was just kind of like another app that you would download back in 2013, right? And there was so much less going on social media back then, but also because of that, there was a lot of dangerous things. It was just so different back then. So, nowadays, I think that there's so many nuances to this question. First of all, I think that it would be silly to make a blanket statement and consider all social media the same. I think it would also be silly to consider all kids the same or all kids of the same age. Like, no one under the age of 16 should have social media. Okay, well, some 16-year-olds are very different than other 16-year-olds. Also, some social media is very different than others. Snapchat is one where it's primarily messaging, and there's a lot of shady stuff that can go on because of disappearing messages, and there's no comment section. TikTok, it can be very algorithm dependent. YouTube, some people don't even consider that a social media. I remember being on YouTube as like a 10-year-old and watching like Charlie Bit My Finger back in the day. And so I think that there's definitely rabbit holes of dangerous things that kids can go down on YouTube, but maybe YouTube is a more safe platform. So I don't have necessarily a one size fits all answer. I know what I think is best. Like for me, one day, if I'm fortunate enough to be a parent myself, and how my wife and I will handle this. But I think it's going to be very, very nuanced. It's going to be very dependent on the child, their age, the social media in question, your relationship with the child. But I got to say, the documentaries that I've been watching recently and the stories, not just about like what kids are doing, but more so like what the mom influencers who are filming their kids are doing to these kids and things like that it's really scary and really sad. So I wish I had a better answer other than just it depends. But really, I think it does depend on so many different factors.
There is no right or wrong answer. It's just like,
Yeah.
I think you're right though, because it's in the moment. Ask me this maybe 2-3 years ago, I probably would have had a different answer, maybe even like
Same.
yesterday. I think that it moves so fast, and especially with AI as well. I think everything is moving so fast, it's hard to actually have one policy that fits all. I mean, my son, he is 8 and he's been wanting to be on YouTube, and every now and then we're like, yeah, we support your vision for sure. But then we're like, but do we really want you on socials? No, we don't. And we pivot back and forth. And as you know, I'm on social media. So I'm like, okay, well, he sees me be on Instagram. He knows I do IG lives. He knows I do all these things. So it's normalized for him. So where do you put the boundary, and when do you say no? And when do you, I know he's only young, but like, when do you quash a young entrepreneur's kind of dream of doing something that is entrepreneurial? It's hard to say.
It's such a tough question. I think so much of it, I was, like I said, getting on social media at a young age as these social medias were coming out. I think my first ever, if you call it social media, really my first ever online presence was a blog that I think I started when I was 8 years old. But going back to that blog, you can see that the first ever blog post was very clearly written by my mom. And it was the kind of thing that you often see this taking place in like early schooling, where the kid will tell the teacher what they want the note to say. And then the teacher will write the quote unquote note to the parent, or the teacher will write the the letter or the paragraph because the kid can't really write it. So you can see in my first ever blog post when I was 8, my mom wrote it. Like it was me telling her what I wanted to say, but she wrote it. And then in the second blog post, it is hilarious to reread because there are so many misspelt words and typos and weird sentences. And you can tell that I actually wrote it. But I think really what I'm getting at here is that it's important to have parents monitoring, like whether it's simply watching a YouTube video, which like, talk about iPad kids. There are babies who just get handed an iPad and they're just watching videos on YouTube of Miss Rachel, whether it's something like that or all the way up to an 18-year-old senior in high school who now has all these different social media apps. I think it really just comes down to having the parent have access to these apps and have the ability to monitor and to check in. And that was something that my parents always did, is they always made it clear to my sister and I that, hey, we have your login, we have your password. And they would also say things like, we have secret private accounts that we follow you from that you don't even know exist, things like that. But it's like, whoa, like, is mom and dad following me? Do they know what's going on? And so just that little guide or a little reminder that they were there, that they were checking in, or that they could check in was enough for my sister and I to make sure that we weren't doing anything we shouldn't.
Did you ever find out whether they actually did have secret accounts following you?
Yeah, I don't know. That was something that, and again, I think they started telling us that like kind of towards the end of high school, and once we were in college and once we were adults, they like told us that was something that they did. But to your point, I don't know if it was something they actually ever used. Like they would
Yeah.
say that they did, but I don't know if it actually took place or if it was just kind of like a, hey, we're watching you type of thing.
Yeah. So how has it been for you? Because you work with your mom, and I recently saw that she's stepping down from the podcast as well.
Mhm.
And how has that relationship been for you? I posted online to say I was interviewing you, and there were lots of questions around the relationship with your mom and how it is to be in an entrepreneurial family like this. What is it like to
Mhm.
grow up like that? These are some of the questions that came up. Do you want to speak to that?
Sure, absolutely. So I was raised in an environment where entrepreneurship was the norm, and the idea of like going to college and getting a traditional job, that was the like other option. Like that was the plan B option within my family. And so my whole life I have been an entrepreneur, not because my parents sat us down at the dinner table and taught us about KPIs and business structure, but because that's just what they would talk about. That's what they would do, right? They had their home office where they were working. And so we would hang out, and very much through a monkey see, monkey do sort of approach. I started a couple businesses when I was little, and my parents were really great to never force me to do these things, or even once I started them, force me to keep doing them. Most of my quote unquote businesses were, I came up with an idea or I had a certain skill set and I would do it for a couple of months. And then as kids do, I would get bored and I would move on to the next thing, or football season would start and I'd forget all about whatever I was doing over the summer and dive headfirst into football and sports or whatever. But I was doing that my whole life. And then fast forward to my freshman year of college, I was going to school on the East Coast of the United States. I was born and raised on the West Coast. And so I was feeling very homesick. I was feeling very much like an outsider, very removed from the rest of the people who I was going to school with. I think I was one of 2 kids on the entire football team who were from west of the Mississippi River. So everyone else was from the East Coast and I was from the West. And so at that time, what was really popular on the news and what everyone was really talking about was kind of relating to our first question, the dangers of Snapchat and the dangers of what are teens doing on Snap. So I recognized that there was this problem, this really important issue that was being talked about a lot on the news. And I also recognized that I had a unique skill set to solve that problem because, like I said, my parents were across the country, so I had just taught them how to use Snapchat. And I said, hey guys, I'm not going to text you all day. I'm not going to be FaceTiming you all the time. I'll just add, we'll become friends on Snapchat and I'll send you snaps throughout my day of little things that I'm doing around campus and whatnot. And so I recognized that there was this need. I had this skill set. And so I started this first business. And it was a business that my mom very much gave me a lot of the guidance to help start. I mean, she's been doing marketing now at this point for over 20, 30 years,
Mm.
longer than I've been alive. And so at that point, my freshman year of college, she very much told me, hey, here are the steps. Here's how you create this business. Here's how you launch this business. I did all of it on my own, but she was definitely the one who was like my coach or my instructor along the way. And then that business has grown and evolved and changed over the last few years. And so, like I said, it started with helping moms keep their kids safe on Snapchat.
Yeah.
And then it evolved into helping small business owners use Snapchat for marketing. And then that evolved into Snapchat stories for marketing, Instagram stories for marketing. And now it is what people know it as today, which is Instagram marketing. And so it's very much organically grown, but my mom's been there all along the way to help and guide and support me. And then in 2020, we launched our current business, which represents the largest portion of where my income comes from, which is our membership business called the Insta Club Hub. It's basically a membership for an Instagram course and community, teaches people how to grow and make money on Instagram. And we started that in 2020, and we've been doing it for about 5 years. We've got 7,000 members in the club. And so that's the primary business today.
Okay. Can I ask you a little bit about price and money? Because when you started off, I know it was a while ago, but I kind of want to speak to the relationship you have with money and how you thought about pricing back then and how it is now.
Yeah.
How did it kick off for you?
Yeah. So to speak about money mindset, my parents have always been quite preachy within their community, within their circles, and even to my sister and I growing up about having an abundance mindset and having, especially an abundance mindset in regards to money, in regards to finances. They were it was very important for them in raising us that they never said things like, oh, we can't afford that, or oh, that's too expensive, or things like that. It was always, and this came from, I believe, my mom's parents who originally did this with her, is let's find a way to afford that. Let's figure out how we can purchase that. Even my sister and I as kids, kids will like pick out the most expensive toy every time somehow. It wasn't like, no, honey, that's too much money. It was, okay, well, let's figure out a way that you can earn that money. Let's figure out a way that you can do a lemonade stand and earn the money to then buy that thing that you really want. And so that's kind of the mindset that I've always had, and the mindset I still have to this day. Like when my wife and I are buying a house, or we're renovating or whatever, it's like, well, let's figure out the way to afford that. Let's figure out how we can make that possible, how we can earn the money to make that possible. But then the way that this kind of relates to my business is another thing that I've always heard in my parents' business, and that I've always believed myself, is that you should always over deliver. Always over deliver. You never want to be in a place where you feel like you're charging too much and you're not really making it worth it for the people who are becoming your customers. And so in that first course that I created, I believe I sold it for, I think, $19 USD. And so at that time, especially compared to what's out there in the world today, I think that was really underpriced. There was a ton of value in that course. It was like 4 or 5 modules teaching parents how to use Snapchat and my thoughts around keeping their kids safe on Snapchat. And I was charging less than $20. Nowadays, a course like that would probably be a couple $100. And that mindset of over delivering and charging as low prices as possible has sustained all the way through our Insta Club Hub, where currently we have 3 main price models. We have a $7 trial for 2 weeks, and that includes almost everything in the club. There's a few things that aren't included in the trial, but almost everything you can get for just $7 for 2 weeks. And then we have a monthly price at $47 a month, which again is relatively low by industry standards. We sometimes do competitor analysis to see what other people are charging. And for what we offer for $47 a month, most people are charging between $99 and $127 or $129 a month. And then our annual price is only $299 for the year, which again is something that most people are charging $500, $600, $700, or even well over $1,000 per year for what we offer. So that's something that we've always strived to do, is charge less but offer more than everyone else. And it's been effective.
Yeah. I'm trying to see the challenge though. So you've got this amazing abundance money mindset. You have a supportive mom and you've got the opportunities, what challenges were you facing?
A ton. I think part of it is we faced a ton of challenges in business and in life, but I also think part of it is like growing up. I did have a very privileged life, and I acknowledge that, and I talk about that sometimes, and I talk about how even that in itself is I wish, and sounds so horrible to say, but sometimes I wish I had faced some more challenges growing up, so that I could understand, or so that I had a rags to riches story, or so that I had I was raised in poverty and I made it out type of thing. Because I think that would be more relatable and more inspirational to people, but that's not the reality of my situation. So all I can do is live the life and use the privilege that I have been given for good. And so that's what I've tried to do. But in business, we face so many challenges and setbacks. One of the major ones was, like I mentioned earlier, I was a college student athlete. And this was back at the time before nowadays there's what's called NIL, name, image, and likeness, where student athletes can now make pretty much all the money they want. They are free to use who they are as a student athlete to get brand deals and get sponsorships and sell things, be in commercials, right? But when I was in college, and I graduated like 2 or 3 years before this change took place, it was the polar opposite. It was, if you are using your name, image, or likeness to make any money, that's not allowed. That is completely banned by the NCAA. You basically had to be this like nameless, faceless individual. And so all of this to say, after I started my first business, the NCAA shut down my business for almost a year, because they had to do a full investigation to make sure that I wasn't just using who I was as a college athlete to promote the business. And I had to prove to them that no, I haven't used that at all in my marketing. I launched the business technically before my first fall of university, my first semester. And so because of that, technically I had the business previously existing before I was a formal student athlete. And so there was a lot of legal hoops I had to jump through, had to completely put the business on pause for 6 to 8 months. There was a threat from the NCAA that I might have to return all of the goods and services that I had previously done and refund everyone their money, everything I had made for the first couple years of business. And so that was a major challenge. And then we've gone through lots of major challenges since then. With running a business with my mom is very fun, very rewarding, but it also presents challenges. And it there's certain things that you might be able to say to an employee or a boss that you wouldn't say to your mom, and certain things that you would say to your mom that you wouldn't say to a boss or an employer, and so or a business partner, I should say. And so it's been an interesting challenge over the last few years to really navigate that relationship and how our professional relationship relates to our personal relationship, and just dealing with all the challenges there.
Yeah. You're so well spoken, Brock. Like every time I
Oh, thank
listen
you.
to you, anywhere I listen to you, like you're well spoken, you know what to say, how to say it. How did you get to that point? Is there a journey where you feel like, no, it wasn't always like this?
Well, I would honestly say part of it is that it kind of always has been like this. And I mentioned earlier that like there were some challenges growing up. One of those is that I was a hardcore perfectionist and people pleaser. And it's funny, we often celebrate the kids who, man, that kid really knows how to speak to adults. That kid, he might be 7 years old, but he can really hold a conversation with adults. Well, while that might be really cool, and while that was definitely me as a child, that oftentimes stems from perfectionism or people pleaser tendencies or traumas that kid has experienced, where that kid has to be hyper vigilant and hyper aware of the emotions and the feelings and the thoughts of the adults. Most kids are preoccupied in their own imagination and playing with their toys, but then there are those few kids who can really hold the conversation with the adults in the room. And like I said, that might be really cool, but it's also important to recognize what is probably causing that. But that was me as a kid. I was the kid who, from a really young age, was being praised at my ability to talk to adults and my ability to hold a conversation. So because of that, plus the fact that I have always enjoyed being the center of attention, I've always been an extrovert. I've always been someone who likes to make people laugh and likes to teach others and kind of be a leader. I think all of that has led through the first probably 19 years of my life, just developing the skills where I can empathize with others and think quickly on my feet in order to figure out what I need to say and how I need to say it and how it needs to be presented. And then now that I've been in business for, gosh, I started my first the Snapchat business when I was 19, and I think I'm 28. So 9 years later, it's a lot of practice. It's a lot of talking on camera. I've been podcasting since 2018. So I've been podcasting for a good 7 years now. Been speaking on stages since 2017 or 2018. So it's a lot of practice. It's a lot of reps. And so I think that there was the sort of natural predisposition to be someone who enjoyed talking and could think and speak well, coupled with years and years and years of practice.
Yeah. And it sounds like if you're in a position where you don't have the natural predisposition, you can still get there with the practice. Is that the
100%.
advice that you would give?
100%. I mean, part of this is also like, we were talking about YouTube earlier. I created my first YouTube channel when I was maybe 10 or 11 years old. And fortunately, YouTube was very different back then, but I was doing basketball trick shot videos, and I was doing dozens of those videos every single year. So it was practice, right? I have been practicing since I was a child. I have tens of thousands of hours. I wish I could total it all up of how many raw video hours I've created, probably hundreds of thousands of hours of video content, speaking to the camera. So I don't hate the sound of my voice anymore. I don't hate the way I look on camera. I've become numb to it probably, but it's just so much practice. And so, yeah, I believe that even if you don't have that natural predisposition, it's a skill set that can be learned and improved.
Mm-hmm. Is there a side of you that we don't see? Because you're so open. It feels like you're extremely available, open, and we see so much of you.
Yeah,
Is there a side?
I think I try to be as real and as the same online as I am in person. I think that there might be some frustrations that I might have that I don't always vocalize because I like to spread, positivity and encouragement online. So I don't always vocalize my frustrations as much. I don't like to put that negative energy out into the world because I don't like to bring it to myself.
Yeah.
That's more reserved for maybe my friends or my wife, who I will vent to. I also think that on podcasts and in person, I'm lower energy than people expect because my brand is very much one that is enthusiastic, bright, energetic, and that's very much how I show up online. I am an energetic, talkative, outgoing person, but I think that sometimes when people meet me in person, they expect me to be dominating the room. And that's not necessarily who I am. I'm not someone who has like a huge personality where, like there's that one person at the dance party who's like getting everyone together and leading the train. And then there's that person who's like wants all eyes on them at all times. I don't think that's necessarily me. I don't shy away from being the center of attention, but I also don't like to intentionally, be extravagant and be crazy and wild and out there. I'm thinking of some friends and some family members who do fit that category. I think people kind of expect that from me sometimes, but I think I'm much more chill and easygoing than some people might expect. But for the most part, what you see is what you get. For the most part, I'm, the same person online as offline.
Yeah. I don't mean it in a question in a way where I don't think you are, but I just wondered if there are certain parts that I know you reserve, which you've answered. So I like that. One of the things that I find quite difficult, what I found quite difficult early on. So I've been in business for a really long time, but my first business, which was in the restaurant world, I didn't want to be the face of it. So whenever press came to me, I used to send other people in my stead. I'm like, you're really outgoing. You can take this interview. I was really, really shy. So for me, it's been a journey to be the face of my business. When I think about how I was, and one of the reasons I was is because I was really afraid of being judged. And what if people said something negative, or what if I said something wrong, and then there would be some lashback, something that is negative towards you.
Yeah.
Has that ever been a concern for you? I know you started early, but like as you grow, there's just so many more people who are watching you and who have opinions.
Yeah. So that has been a concern, and I don't want to lie and say that like it's something I never think about. It's definitely something that I consider. But part of my story is that I was raised in a family where for the first 18 years of my life, I know we've talked about like the business and the monkey see, monkey do, but really for the first 18 years of my life, I was a football player 100%. I was a business owner like 3%, and I know it's 103%, but my whole mind, my whole being was filled up with being a football player. My dad and my uncle both played professionally. My grandfather played collegiately and is one of the winningest coaches in the history of the state of California. And so I was raised in this environment where everything had to do with football. And from the time I was born, it was talked about how I was the next in line. I was the third generation to be the quarterback and be the football player. And so I remember being 10 years old, or maybe it was 11 or 12 years old, downloading Twitter. And this was in the early days of Twitter when we were still limited to whatever it was, 140 characters. Yeah. You could do like 1 or 2 sentences per tweet. And I was just posting on there for fun, being a kid. And I had amassed a couple thousand followers, just posting funny thoughts and whatever. And then I remember my uncle, who, like I said, he played professional football. He said, you probably want to delete your Twitter because there's going to be a lot of people saying negative things about you. You don't want to read what people are saying. And he said, you probably want to stop reading the newspaper because everyone's going to have an opinion of you and of your family. So you probably don't want to read the newspaper. And that was advice that he had learned from his experiences, and advice that I really took to heart, even as a young kid. And so throughout my high school career, I didn't really read the newspaper. I didn't read social media. I never, ever looked myself up. I never sought out where the negative energy and the negative comments could be. And now in my current profession, I think a lot of those practices and behaviors have sustained. And so like recently I got to interview the head of Instagram, Adam Mosseri, and fortunately, most of the criticisms and negative comments that would come or that did come from that interview were about him and about Instagram rather than about me as the interviewee. But I knew heading into it that this is going to be something that's going to get a lot of views. It's going to get a lot of attention, and it's going to get a lot of outside attention from people who do not know me, do not follow me, do not know my story. And so I should not read the comments. And I've tried my best to not read the comments below that podcast or that YouTube video. Similarly, whenever I have a post that goes viral, I don't read the comments. I don't look through the messages. I don't see what people are saying, because the more viral you go, the more you're going to reach people who are farther and farther outside of your circle. And when people don't know you and they don't know your story, they're just some random person on the internet, they're a lot more willing to say mean, nasty things that they don't even mean, things they don't even remember saying in the first place, but things that ultimately, when you read them, you will take them to heart and you will take them very personally. So this is a long way of saying basically I look away. I don't read comment sections. I don't look at what people are saying. I never look up my name. And I've always tried to just keep myself away from those things, because ultimately people will say them, and everyone's entitled to their opinion. Everyone's entitled to whatever they want to say, whatever they want to believe. But that's something I try to keep myself away from, and keep myself rooted in my family and my friends and my faith and the things that I believe in about myself, rather than trying to seek that external validation.
Yeah, I can see that tactic is obviously going to be really useful. When you told the story and your uncle then said, you're going to read a lot of negative comments about you, what I was feeling at that point, like, oh, at such an early age to instill so much fear in someone, that's quite a lot. And go ahead.
No, I was going to say it is quite a lot. It was quite a lot. And it was something that very much fueled, like I said earlier, that like people pleaser, perfectionist sort of behaviors, tendencies that I had growing up, and things that very much boiled over in my early 20s. And I had to do a lot of therapy and unlearning and work to kind of like move through these unhelpful behaviors. But it was definitely a lot of fear to give a young kid. But for me as a young kid, it didn't manifest as fear as much as it manifested in motivation, in like I want to prove you wrong type of mindset. I don't want to know what you're saying. I don't want to read it word for word, but I know that the haters and the doubters and the non-believers are out there. And so just for the sake that they're out there, I was motivated to prove them wrong rather than fearful that they might be right.
I suppose you have your community, but you also do one-to-one calls, right?
And very few, but yeah.
Okay. Wait, what's your criteria to take on a one-to-one client?
It's very strict. I have an application process, and they have to fill out a form with their goals, their current account size, their all of this stuff. And then basically, if I know that I can benefit them, I will work with them. And usually it's just for 1 hour or 2 hours a month at most. Mm-hmm. I used to do a ton of one-on-one coaching, and I got very burnt out from that. I was priced way too low. And so now my prices are quite high for my one-on-one coaching, but that is a reflection of the supply, the applications I receive, and the demand, which is the application I receive, and the supply, which is the fact that I only want to do a couple hours a month.
Yeah. Are you open to sharing what you used to charge and when you felt that it was too low and what you're charging now?
Yeah, I think I used to charge like $197 for a 1 hour call. And I would often put that on sale for $150. Or I remember one time I was sitting in, and it was actually kind of ironic. I was sitting in an economy class in college. And I was sitting next to my buddy, and he always tells this story. That's the only reason I remember it. But I was like, hey, should I do a sale? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, I usually sell my coaching for $197. What should I sell it for? And he goes, put it on sale for $97. And so I was like, okay. And I was doing it on my phone in class, and I put up a sale on my Instagram stories. And this was at a time when I maybe had 20 or 30,000 followers on Instagram, put it up for $97. And I checked after class, and I had so many people who had taken advantage of that deal and booked. And so I instantly had to shut it down and raise the prices and end the sale. But basically my 2020 was I was working a 9 to 5 from home, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. I was doing one-on-one call after one-on-one call just all day long. I would never even have time to break for food. I would just have she was my girlfriend at the time, my now wife. She would like slide me food under the door, like throw a protein bar in. I'd sneak a quick snack. And so very much thankful for that time, because that was my primary income source at the time. And I learned so much from that one-on-one coaching, and so much of what came out of those sessions is now included in the Insta Club Hub. But it's also something where I recognize that I can help a lot more people at a much more affordable price for them with a membership or with a course than with one-on-one coaching all day long. So now I charge a few $1,000s for a one-on-one session, and it's quite difficult to get a one-on-one session. And I don't say that to stroke my ego. I say that because the reality is I don't want to do very many one-on-one sessions.
No, I like that strategy very much. I think you can probably double that as well, and that will limit the number of people who apply. Is there ever an opportunity, or is there ever a time where you're like, oh, I really want to work with this person? Like you see something like this would be so interesting. And do you want to mention who
there are? And those are the people who, when they apply and I get really excited, that those are the people I end up working with. I basically only work with the people who I either know I can make a huge difference in a short amount of time, or I see their niche or their example, or I see where they're at, and I'm like, oh, I am so excited to help this person. Like, this is the type of person who I just know I can get results for, and they fire me up. And then there are also people who are maybe friends from college, or people who are in other industries who I just love what they're doing, and I'm excited about their journey. And so sometimes I'll just offer, hey, do you want to hop on a call and I'll help you for an hour? I remember before this most recent snowboarding season, which snowboarding is like my number one passion. It's my number one hobby. Before the snowboard season, I worked with like maybe a half dozen snowboarding brands and small shops and snowboard manufacturers, helping them get their social media right. And that was all just pro bono for fun, because I want to give back to the snowboarding community. And so that was something like you said, that excited me, but I didn't charge a dime or make a cent from that.
Are there any, you're talking about pro bono, so I'm just wondering, are there any other pro bono things or charities or causes that are strong to your heart or close to your heart that you're wanting to support in the future?
Yeah, my wife and I have done a fair amount with some dog rescues and helping them with social media and with fostering. We fostered a few dogs ourselves. We also raised I don't remember how much, but quite a bit of money, a few $1,000s for the LA fires when that was taking place, because I'm from Southern California. My sister lives in LA right now, and so when those fires were going on last fall, we raised quite a bit of money for LA fire relief. And whenever I can, whenever there's something like that that really hits close to home, or especially something with animals, that's kind of like one of my causes that I always gravitate towards is helping animals, dogs, birds. We have a pet bird, so birds have a special place in my heart too. But stuff like that is stuff that my wife and I always try to donate to and support, whether it's through my coaching or directly through funds.
Yeah. It'd be really remiss of me if I don't ask some of the questions that people have for you. So I'm going to go into my Instagram and look at the questions. Just give me 2 secs. Okay. People are really curious about how many people are actually working in your team and what do they do, like your whole content creation process. I'm sure you've spoken about this before, but do you want to maybe break it down a bit?
Sure. So I think there's kind of layers to this. I think of it as kind of like an umbrella. One umbrella is what's called Team Johnson. My dad's the COO, Chief Financial Officer, CFO, and my mom's the CEO. Sorry. And so that business has like maybe 4 or 5 different verticals, different niches. The primary one that my mom is focused on is what's called Phase It Up, which is more of like a fitness, hormones, sort of helping women through premenopause and menopause type of business right now. But there's a few other businesses that are a part of Team Johnson. One of those is the Insta Club Hub. And so I should actually back up and say within Team Johnson, there's maybe 40 to 50 different team members. And I say team members because some are full-time staff, some are independent contractors, some might work on multiple businesses within Team Johnson. But one of those businesses is the Insta Club Hub. That's the one that I am the CEO of, and I am the primary or the majority owner of. And within the Insta Club Hub, we have about 20 to 25 team members. Some are copywriters. We have an internal like operations or program director. We have a vice president who is also the head of marketing. We have 3 or 4 people on our customer service team. We have 4 or 5 other Instagram coaches who help with profile reviews and who help with one-on-one coaching. We have a community manager. We have a social media manager. We have someone who literally has a PhD in researching and studying Instagram. And so we call her our doctor of Instagram, and she helps us conduct studies and do research and find data basically. And so, like I said, about 20 people on that team, and that really helps that business stay afloat. And then within my personal team, between my wife and I, we have 4 or 5 different team members. So there's myself, there is my wife, who is my CFO. She is very type A and organized, and I would not be able to do all that I do without her. So extremely thankful for her. We also have an editor who does all of my, or I should say a lot of my short form content, not quite all, but a lot of my short form content. Within the podcasts, we have 2 editors and a podcast manager there. I have a graphic designer. We have an accounting team. I have a personal assistant who helps keep my day-to-day life afloat. I have a community manager. And then actually right now we're in the process of adding a couple other people to our personal team to help manage my Instagram and manage my different socials. So I know that was a long answer, but to kind of simplify it, in terms of my content creation, I really don't have a ton of help on that side. I have a lot of help with the podcast content creation, but in terms of short form content creation, I have my editor who she maybe edits a third of the reels that I post, or maybe a quarter of the total posts that I make on Instagram. I have a graphic designer who I should use more, but I don't use enough because oftentimes I just whip stuff up myself and I think it's good enough. And so that's fine. And then I do have a community manager who helps me respond to comments and direct messages. And that's really something, that's a role that is a product of the volume of messages and comments that I receive. That's not something that I think everyone needs. It's something that I needed once I reached 150,000 followers, and I felt bad that people were asking questions and leaving comments that weren't getting responses. So hired someone to help out with that.
So are you telling me that you're basically content creating yourself, most of your content, or do you have someone who's ideating and planning for you?
Most of it is myself. Our Instagram doctor, so to speak, she does give me a weekly rundown of different popular trends, different things that she's noticing taking place. Or, I'll give you an example. Recently, there was the, everyone's making a AI action figure doll of themselves with ChatGPT. That was one of the things that as soon as she caught it, and saw people doing it, she added that to my weekly rundown. So that's more of helping me with the ideation process, but not a ton with the content creation process. And then I do have someone where actually one of the new roles that we are adding to the team is someone who can kind of be like my second brain. They can help spot trends. They can help whip up some content. They can help ideate with me, and maybe do a little bit of editing or creation here or there. But the majority of the ideas, the majority of the posts, the majority of the strategy, and the majority of the creation comes from me.
Okay. So I think this is where people want more details. So how do you keep creating content at such a high level that gains traction and is useful and is fun?
Yeah, I think part of it is that I have outsourced everything else, right? So I don't have to worry about the business, the email marketing. I don't have to worry about the copywriting, the sales pages. I don't have to worry about anything within the business besides the marketing of the business, and then being the CEO who can manage the team and, make sure that everyone's checking off their to-dos and doing the right things when they should be doing them. So because we have all of that taken care of, I can spend a lot more time focusing on the marketing, which means I can spend a lot more time focusing on the content. With all of that being said, I've been creating content around one topic for the last 5 years, 6 years. So that's 6 years worth of posts that have to do with helping people grow on Instagram. And so that is not only 6 years of practice, but that's also so much content that I can repost. So part of the way that I'm able to keep such a large or a high frequency of posting is that most of my posts are not new. I would say 75% of my posts are not new. 75% of my posts are either a direct repost of something that I posted a few months ago and I'm just posting it a second time, or it's a slight recreation, a modification. Maybe I've slightly tweaked the audio or the caption or the text on the screen, but it's basically the same video. I'm also a huge proponent now, thanks to my years of practice and years of therapy, of done is better than perfect. And so I frequently make posts that have typos and misspellings and errors and mistakes. And sometimes people will say, "Oh my gosh, that was so smart that you put that typo because it was great for engagement." And I say, absolutely not. That was not intentional. That was not done for engagement. In my opinion, that's kind of sleazy and tacky. And number 4, I'm just creating so quickly and focused on, okay, what's the next idea that I'm going to crank out, rather than trying to perfect this current idea that I'm posting. And so I think all of that has allowed me to really scale up my number of posts. And then over time, like I said, practice, right? I've really trained myself to create posts quickly, and to not overthink. And I don't necessarily use like templates in Canva or like Reels templates in my editing apps. I just try to create as quickly as I possibly can. And then over time, it gets quicker and quicker and quicker, and the results get better.
Yeah. Okay, cool. My son just made an entry. This is the beauty of being from home. But I shall get the editor to that. Lucas, can you please close the door behind you, please? And he doesn't close the door, but it's okay. All right. There are a few questions from 3 people here, and they're asking, if I'm not getting any reach on my Instagram, should I start a new one, or is it just that my content is bad? That's paraphrasing 2 or 3 different questions here.
Yeah, I think tough for me to say exactly without taking a look at your content, but I would say that 98% of the time you shouldn't start a new account, and it's just really your content. It might be your expectations around your content. I got a message yesterday from a guy who said, "Brock, what's going wrong? I feel like I'm making great posts, but I'm only getting 50 views per reel." And I looked at his account. He has 100 followers. So 50 views and 100 followers, that's quite a high view ratio. And sure, you might look at the number of views and say like, oh, well, he should be getting hundreds of views or thousands of views. But his expectation was that he should get at least 100 views because he has 100 followers. And so that's just a misaligned expectation. So for anyone listening, maybe your expectations need to be changed. But more likely than not, your content just needs to be improved. And not every piece of content you post, not every reel you make is going to go viral or is going to perform well. But the more that you post at the end of the day, the more you grow. The more you post, the more you can learn. The more you post, the more practice you have. The more you post, the more likely it is that one of those goes viral and does really well. And so I'm a proponent of constantly trying to improve your content. And I believe that the best way to do that is through putting the reps in and practicing.
I like that response a lot, especially with the expectation management.
Yeah.
I have two more questions, which are fun. These are not repeats. So this from Kristen. She says, what was the most important lesson you learned from your parents?
Outsource, at least in the business world, outsource and ask for help. One of the best things that I did in my business was, way before I was ready, I hired a virtual assistant. I hired a virtual assistant before I knew what to do with her or what tasks to give her. But I believe that there's kind of like, if we imagine the timeline or the spectrum of, okay, over here is I'm not ready to hire. Maybe I don't think I can afford it. I don't think I have imposter syndrome, or I don't think I have enough tasks to give this person. And then over here is, oh my gosh, it's too late. I'm sinking. I'm drowning. I'm going to burn out. I need to hire someone. Those are like the two ends of the spectrum. And a lot of people try to find that perfect sweet spot in the middle where it's like, okay, it's the perfect time to hire. But that doesn't exist. And so what ends up happening is you're like, I don't need it. I don't need it. I don't need it. Oh my God, I need it. I need it. I need it. I need it yesterday. And so what I tell people is don't wait until you're freaking out. Don't wait until it's too late. Hire someone before you totally feel ready. Like, be scared and hire someone anyways. That was something that I learned from my parents. And when you outsource, you remove yourself as the bottleneck. And then now we're at the point where we have, 30-ish people who I'm responsible for, more or less, who are on our team. And because of that, my life is very peaceful. My life is not chaotic. I have never burnt out. I've never gotten close to burning out with creating content on social media. And I think a huge reason for that is that all of the other stresses and worries and concerns that I could possibly deal with have been passed on to not only other people, but other people who either enjoy those things and or are really good at those things.
Yeah. Wait, so you've never burnt out? I know you added from content creation, but you've never burnt out ever.
I don't think I've ever burnt out, period. Specifically, yeah, from content creation, but in terms of the business or podcasting, I've been doing a weekly podcast every week for the last 5 or 6 years. I think one of my superpowers is consistency and being able to just keep doing the same thing. I'm very much a creature of habit. My wife oftentimes laughs that I have the exact same breakfast and second breakfast and coffee every single day. And when I was in college, I had the exact same lunch and the exact same dinner every day. She has definitely added some variety to my life. But I'm a creature of habit. I like doing the same things. I like routine. And no, I've never burnt out, which isn't a very relatable thing to say. But
great,
it's the truth.
I think it's amazing that you haven't burnt out. I don't think it's a badge of honor at all to say you've burnt out. I think yours is a badge of honor, managing yourself, your time, and your energy. I love that. Do you know your human design by any chance?
I do, and I could look it up real quick because I know I've done it before.
I was just curious.
That's like it's like the letters, right? It's like ENFJ, something like that.
No, that's the Myers-Briggs. So human
Myers-Briggs. Okay, so then I don't know my human design. I know my Enneagram. I know my Myers-Briggs. I don't know my human design.
I might ask you about that after the podcast, and if you want to share it, I'll put it in the comments afterwards.
For sure.
I usually use it as a personality mapping tool. It's similar to Enneagram, but it's a little bit more maybe woo because it uses I Ching, Kabbalah, astrology, and one other which I can't think of right now. So it's like 4 different elements all put together, and then you can see like a personality mapping out of it. I like it.
Gotcha.
Imposter syndrome. You mentioned that, and I cannot not go there. But it feels like maybe you've never experienced that either. Have you ever experienced imposter syndrome?
Yes, yes. I have, but not a ton of it.
Hmm.
I'm trying to think of a specific example, maybe recently where I have experienced it. I think I might experience it in small moments, in brief feelings, but I think those are oftentimes fueled by anxiety or insecurity. And I've always been someone who is quite skilled, at least recently in my last decade of life. Quite skilled at squashing my anxiety and subduing my negative self-beliefs or my insecurities. But there are still times where it pops up. Like I remember in the preparation for my interview with Adam, there was some imposter syndrome there. But really, whenever I feel that imposter syndrome, I just go back to a place of reminding myself of the confidence that I should have, or the good things that I have done, or the reasons that I should be confident, that I should be more secure, that I'm not actually an imposter. Or I go back to, okay, well, if I feel like an imposter, it's usually because I feel like I don't know something, or I haven't researched enough, or I haven't prepared enough. So I just go back to a place of preparation, like rather than sitting in the anxiety and the worry and the concern. If I'm doing a big presentation and I feel some imposter syndrome, okay, well, let me prepare more for the presentation. Let me do some more research. Let me improve my slides and practice a little bit, because once I get more used to it, then I won't feel like such an imposter.
Yeah. I like the way that you're using it, because if it comes up, it is telling you something, and it seems like you're really listening to your body, you're listening to what's needed, and then addressing it in a very good way. I have a fun question here that someone asked.
Mm-hmm.
If you, no, wait, if your creativity were an animal right now, what would it be?
I think a monkey. I don't consider myself a super creative person or a creative genius by any means. I don't even think I'm that creative. But I do think my creativity is kind of like a monkey, in that it's a little all over the place. It's a little chaotic. It's kind of swinging from branch to branch. Sometimes it's hurling its feces around, but it's just a little hard to control.
I like it. That's a good answer. Brock, what's
Thanks.
next for you?
Um, Continuing to do what I'm doing. I oftentimes struggle with this question of what's next, or what's my 5-year plan, or what's my vision. We had a member of our staff one time who said that their goal in life, or at least in business, was to be a part of building $1 billion business. And I could not relate to anything less. I have no interest in building $1 billion business. I have no interest in having fancy sports cars, or those other crazy material possessions. I have no interest in having a team with 10,000 people. My professional career goal is to help as many people as possible, and I'm helping a lot of people right now, and I'm really happy with that. And I want to help more people, and I want to scale the business, and I want to be able to help more people at a more affordable rate. But professional wise, we're doing pretty good, and I want to keep that up. And then life wise, I'm really happy with where my life is right now. I'm really happy with the life that I'm living. I very much designed my life to be what my version and my definition of success is, which is being able to do what I want with who I want, whenever I want. And so for me, like, I don't work a ton of hours every day. I spend a lot of time with my wife and our animals, and I want to be a better husband for her. I want to be a better son to my parents. I want to be a better friend and brother. And so those are the things that I'm working on. Those are the things that are next for me. I'm not someone who sets 5-year goals or anything like that. I used to be, but not so much anymore. Now I'm very happy with the life that I've built. I have a lot of joy and peace in my life, and I want to keep on keeping on and keep sustaining where we're at.
That's amazing. That's a beautiful note to finish on. Where can people find you and connect with you?
Thank you. I really appreciated this conversation today. I appreciated the direction we went and the things we talked about today. So thank you for having me. The best place to get connected is Instagram, Brock11 Johnson. So the 11 is in the middle there. Brock11 Johnson is my handle. That's also my handle across all other platforms, but Instagram is the best place to get connected.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's it for today's episode of The Creative Flight. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, I invite you to leave a review. It really helps more creators find the show. For more insights and behind the scenes content, you can follow me on Instagram or LinkedIn. You can also check out my resources on ivymalik.com. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time. Until then, keep creating, keep pushing those boundaries, and keep taking flight.